West Virginia head football coach Rich Rodriguez said, and I quote, "We're going to be a lot better up front this year." And to that, I would have to say, well, it'd be pretty difficult to be worse than you were last season. We're going to talk about this West Virginia offensive line in this episode of Mountaineer Moment. Stick around. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. My name's Troy, and this is episode 171 of the show. And we spent a little time off, a few days. March Madness was in full swing over the weekend, and I was enjoying some time with my friends down in North Carolina. So a little break here on Mountaineer Moment, but we are back and better than ever. Again, episode 171. We would love for you to join this Mountaineer Moment community by hitting that subscribe button, right? Like, let's make it official, okay? So YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you're watching or listening, hit that subscribe button for me. If you've been here recently, you know that we've got some merch for sale, some Mountaineer Moment t-shirts. I do not have one handy right now. I plan to pull it up and show you, but I don't have it. So Mountaineer Moment t-shirts are available. If you're interested, you can email us at mountaineermoment@gmail.com. Great deals to give you on a Mountaineer Moment t-shirt, so you can wear the swag and rep us and help grow this channel even in that way. How cool would that be? So if you're interested in a t-shirt, send me an email, mountaineermoment@gmail.com. And this episode, we're getting back in the swing, talking about the football team in episode 171. Rich Rodriguez and Rick Trickett both had press conferences today. Not that we're going like full-on breakdown of what they said in this episode, because that's not what we're doing. Or they had a, this will probably be live on Wednesday. They had a press conference that aired on Tuesday that we're going to talk a little bit about, but really the bulk of what I want to get to isn't necessarily what was rooted in the press conference. It's just about this West Virginia offensive line, breaking it down, because that was the quote when Rich Rodriguez said, "We are going to be better up front." And like I said in that intro, man, like it'd be really, really hard to be worse, because that offensive line was really bad all season for this 4-8 Mountaineer team, and it led to what ended up being, grand scheme of things, big picture, it ended up being a really difficult season for the Mountaineers. It was bad, and not to put a percentage on it, because we're not going to do that, but like a large chunk of it was up front. And you know, the old saying, games are won in the trenches, games are won and lost, and up front, and who wins that battle? Well, West Virginia's offensive line, time in and time out, did not win that battle, and it led to a struggle for this team all season long. We know the story. Quarterback changes, this and that, and it was like the freaking YMCA pickup basketball game. Like, who wants to check in next? And that's kind of what it looked like at times. It was a struggle. Now we have a likely quarterback competition in Morgantown. With a guy we got, familiar with in Scotty Fox Jr. and Malik Hawkins coming from Oklahoma, who can really, really run, and who's going to start. A lot of people would tell you Malik, and then a lot of people are saying, well, Scotty Fox is here and there's a system, maybe he's going to get the nod, because a lot of what he even did was encouraging to see, and then a lot of the struggles that the West Virginia had in those games with Fox weren't necessarily his fault. So there's that. But, man, I'll tell you, like, for starters, like this first initial acknowledgement, it's not the first time Rich Rodriguez has said this, but as we're, mid to late March now, him saying that this team is going to be better up front. You like the sound of it, but you also want to see it play out. And one thing that's encouraging too is heading into last season, the offensive line was a major concern that we had, and that we proved to be right about that. Not just myself here in Mountaineer Moment, but many others in this world of West Virginia football. That was something to keep an eye on, because it might have gone poorly. And it did go poorly up front. And that's not the Rich Rod way. That's not the way he operates. This team wins battles up front. His teams run the football. His teams have success. Pass blocking, run blocking. He's an efficient offensive mind, a great offensive mind. And that wasn't Rich Rod football that we saw for the Mountaineers in 2025. So now, here in 2026,
You've got Rick Trickett back leading the charge, and we'll talk about what he said in just a second. But, and I don't want to totally relive last season. I don't ever want to relive that completely. But even partially, I don't want to relive that fully, relive that here to an extent. But this offensive line last year, if you were to pick a position group, right? If I were to say, hey, pick a position group that struggled last season, and you can only pick one, who would you say? Well, 80 to 90% of Mountaineer fans would say the offensive line, I think. Not that there weren't struggles at quarterback, not that there weren't struggles at running back, not that the wideouts didn't struggle, not that this defense didn't have holes at times, a lot of times. There were struggles everywhere. It wasn't just the offensive line, but they were a big, big, big portion of the struggles for this Mountaineer 2025 football team. To think that we're going to be better up front, and I believe that. How much better? I don't know. Does Rich Rod know how much better? No. But if they make, I would say a jump forward, but a jump forward doesn't really give you much because that could still be a pretty bad offensive line. But if they make a significant jump forward and they are above average, it's going to be like night and day. It really is. I'm not saying that we're going to sit here and have an elite offensive line, but if we have an above average offensive line, pass blocking and run blocking, and a quarterback that's going to get this thing going, and Cam Cook, a talented back, and brought some talented receivers. Not that we didn't have, I thought some talented guys on the outside last year, but it was, Cam Vaughn was here. He had his moments, but it was hard to get him the ball, too. We know the story. Jaden Bray's going to be back and healthy. Got a couple transfers in there. We'll talk about all of those guys another day because we got plenty of time, in the next few months. But we are going to talk about this offensive line group a little bit. Who returns? Who's coming in as a freshman? We know Kevin Brown, the freshman who was committed to Penn State, and we're thankful he's not anymore. We're thankful he's a Mountaineer and going to get things done. I think he's going to have an impact initially, even in year one. But who are the players, who are the candidates for Coach Rodriguez and Rick Trickett that are going to help this offensive line be better and lead the charge up front? Well, you got Landen Livingston returning at center. Josh Aisosa returning as well. Probably going to back him up. Just real quick, and then I'll get into some specifics about some of these guys. You got Nick Krahe returning again. You got Carsten Casady, transfer from UConn. Kevin Brown, Malik Agbo returning at the tackle position. At the guard position, you got Devin Vass from K-State, Amare Grayson from Jacksonville State, Wes King from Wyoming, and Cam Griffin from Jax State as well, a first-team all-conference performer last season at Jax State. And so that's not every piece, right? Some other freshmen on this unit here at the O-line, but those are the guys that figure to see the most action. And some of the returning guys, again, we know Nick Krahe, Landen Livingston, certainly for lack of a full-on major way of putting it and breaking down those two guys, they weren't the biggest problems on the offensive line last season. There were a couple pieces on this offensive line that really, 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 really struggled. We're talking nationally ranked near the very bottom of, PFF grades and those kind of stats. Just really bad seasons from Walter Youngbear, Crawford, just bad. And, Nick Krahe and Landen Livingston, again, they weren't necessarily amazing, but they were returning and they weren't as bad as the other guys who were really bad. Okay. Now, and we'll get to Kevin Brown here in a little bit too, but I want to shout out some of these transfers. We'll start with the tackle, Carsten Casady, who comes in from UConn. Now, Casady is 6'7", 300 pounds, and obviously he's got experience. Spent 2 seasons with UConn, 21 games, 17 starts, and didn't allow a single sack during that span. He started all 12 games this past year at right guard, did Carsten Casady. Again, hasn't allowed a sack. And you're going to continue to see that being a theme with some of these guys that West Virginia has brought in. if that tells you anything. So that's Casady. You got Nick Krahe. We'll do all the tackles now, I guess. You got Kevin Brown again, freshman, who is just a freak. I forget what it was that he squatted the other day that kind of went viral, maybe 3 weeks ago or so. And I know Mountaineer Paul, Locked on West Virginia, very big on Kevin Brown, just as everybody is. But he's gotten to know Kevin a little bit and what he brings to the table, know his story, know what he's got, the tools that he has, and he's a guy with a very, very high ceiling as a freshman even, and super excited to see Kevin Brown. So as far, he might have the highest ceiling on the team. Well, he's just a freshman. He's going to be with some guys that have some experience, like including Carsten Casady, transferring from UConn. Malik Agbo coming back, and Nick Krahe returning as well. At the guard position, this might be the position I'm most excited about with the transfers that have been brought in. You got Devin Vass, transfer from K-State, and the report on Devin Vass is he made nine starts, I believe, for the Wildcats of K-State. 420 snaps, gave up 0 penalties, 199 pass snaps, and 0 sacks in that span, and just 8 hurries. 8 quarterback hurries and 199 pass snaps, and 0 penalties in a 420 snaps. So, again, kind of a theme, and we knew this when we signed these guys because that was kind of the story. When these guys committed to West Virginia, that's kind of one of the things that you would want to know about an offensive line transfer is how many hurries you give up, how many sacks you give up. This is another guy that West Virginia is bringing in from UConn that hasn't allowed a sack. So, pretty cool. Or excuse me, I was talking about Casady a moment ago, but those numbers I read are Devin Vass in the Big 12. 199 pass snaps, 0 sacks, 420 snaps, 9 appearances. So, pretty good. He's a 6'6" redshirt junior, started 7 games for K-State and appeared in, 9 games and no sacks. Pretty good there. Wes King, in 3 years at Wyoming, hasn't allowed a single sack in 1,750 snaps. That ain't bad either, right? So 3 guys that you're bringing in, 3 guys that you're bringing in. Wes King from Wyoming, 6'5", 315. In pass protection according to Pro Football Focus, he graded at a 74.7 and 65.5 in the run game. Now, transferring to the Big 12 is going to be a different animal in itself. But hey, another guy not allowed a single sack in over 1,700 snaps. And so West Virginia, there's a theme, but there was a theme in even how they were recruited, going after guys of that caliber. Amare Grayson from Jax State and Cam Griffin from Jax State. Now we know the deal there with, they had the nation's leading rusher in Cam Cook. Cam Griffin was a first-team all-conference member for Jax State. Obviously, really, 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 really talented. Really good and a big pickup for this Mountaineer team. He played primarily at left guard, 540 career snaps at that position. Little flexibility, though, because he has played at several spots. And he was the one guy, doing a little bit of research, he's the one guy that can, maybe the most, move around a little bit. Part-time starter in 2024. Guess what? Didn't allow a single sack. Knows the system. So he's got 1 year of eligibility remaining, and so it's good to have him coming on over. And then again, mentioned too, Amare Grayson from Jax State is another WVU pickup who was also an all-conference guy So there's intentionality. Amare, Bubba, Grayson, just reading. All conference first team offensive lineman. 28 appearances from his freshman and sophomore year, 22 starts, and 2 years of eligibility remaining. He played with Rick Trickett, obviously, and Rick Trickett's now here at West Virginia. Cam Cook, one of the best rushing attacks at Jax State, fifth in the whole country, even in the year the year after Rich Rod left. But they averaged over 245 yards per game on the ground. So that's another big get for West Virginia. Now, a couple of these guys, obviously with the Jax State guys and Wes King from Wyoming, they're going to step up level in competition. Even Casady from UConn, right? Your step tech going to step up in the Big 12. But you like the fact that they went and got guys, and they were intentional about getting some guys that can make improvements to this offensive line. And Rick Trickett, Rich Rod spoke highly of him today. They both spoke in individual press conferences. Not that I'm breaking that down here, but just kind of speaking to this offensive line and who's working that thing is Rick Trickett, and that's what we'll end this episode talking about him. So he mentioned in his press conference he turned 78 yesterday. Spent 3 years with Rich at Jax State, and it's good to be home in Morgantown. And one of the quotes that I did like from him in the press conference, on Tuesday the 24th, was he said, it's good to come back, and we're desiring to, we want to get this thing right, is what he said. He along with Rich Rodriguez, who were obviously here during some successful times in Mountaineer program history with football in the early 2000s, and wanting to get it right. And that's neat, right? Two West Virginia guys, Trickett and Rich Rod, know the state, know the passion, know what it looks like to win here, know how to win here, know how to be very good at their job. And let's hope that Trickett can be very good at his job. I like the fact that he just loves coaching football. That's what he said. I just love coaching football. That's why I do it. And Rich said of him, another quote, he said, nobody looks after his guys more than Rick Trickett, as far as just on the field and coaching them, and off the field leading them and making sure they're doing the right thing and those kind of things. Nobody looks after his guys more than Rick Trickett. And so that's good. That's what you want to hear too. And, again, mentioning the fact that he's been a part of really, really solid offensive lines back at West Virginia, Florida State, at Jax State the last few years. And again, one of the top rushing offenses in the nation with Cam Cook and a couple of those guys that are coming over from Jax State to Morgantown this year. So that's a really, really, really good get. And, yeah, sure, he's 78 years old, but still appears to have that passion of coaching football, and has had success at the stops that he's made. And excited to see him work with these guys that we just mentioned here on this episode. Excited to see what he can do with Kevin Brown and the returners of Landen Livingston and Nick Krahe. What's their jump going to look like from 2025 to 2026? What are these guys going to do that transfer in? How are they going to plug and play into this lineup? And how quickly can you get to I don't want to say your peak, right? Because you kind of want to peak at the end of the season, but treading toward that, just get better every single game. But how quickly can you get to a place where it's man, this offensive line looks really good? Is it going to be against UVA in September? Or is it going to be in November when you're struggling, right? At what point can you get to where we have a confidence in this offensive line? Because I'll tell you right here, right now, in 2025, there was not a moment when we had a confidence in this offensive line, and that sucked. We can't repeat that. This thing has to be fixed in 2026. And if it's not, right, Rich Rod said it's going to be better. Let's say it's a little bit better, but it still ain't what we want it to be. Or even still's not. It's still laughable, right? Because there might not be the best offensive line Rich Rod's going to have in his second tenure at West Virginia here in 2026. That might come in a few years. I get that. But, I don't want to end the season in a few months and say that offensive line still wasn't right, still didn't look good, still had a lot of problems. That would be a major concern. One, because it's it's a borderline repeat of year two, right? In year two of year one, if you're still sitting there thinking, man, that offensive line was the problem all season long, that would be repeating history. So that's reason number one. You don't want to repeat history in that way. And number two, well, on paper, right? You brought in some dudes. You brought in some size. You brought in some guys with experience. You brought in 3 guys who are known for, they don't give up sacks. So, that's encouraging. And you have Kevin Brown, one of the top recruits in the state of Pennsylvania, 4-star, a lot of 5-star places. Penn State. Franklin goes, and Kevin Brown comes here. Thank you very much. We'll take him, and so there's something to be excited about on this offensive line, but now you gotta, well, not right now because it's March, but this season, man, you gotta put it together and it's gotta work. You cannot, not even just repeat history, you can't have anything close to what that was because it was that bad in 2025. This offensive line has to get right. Rick Trickett said it in the press conference. You have to be able to run. You have to be able to run because that opens up everything else. And if you can't run, it opens up everything for the defense and what they want to do because they can do whatever they want to you. And so you have to be able to run the football. Is there reason to believe that West Virginia's offensive line will improve? Yes, I think they will. How much will they improve? Well, that remains to be seen. I sure hope it's a heck of a lot that they're going to improve. I sure hope this is a really, really good offensive line with all conference selections and Cam Cook that runs for 1,300 yards and, an offense that didn't give up a lot of sacks, right? Like those things sound foreign considering we just came out of what we came out of. But Rick Trickett and these guys you're bringing in, can they make a difference? I think so. And I hope so. So we'll continue, as this season gets closer and we go through spring ball and, basketball transfer portal and the Crown basketball tournament coming up. There's still plenty to discuss here on Mountaineer Moments. So I hope you'll join us for that. We also have some exciting news coming. I can't talk about it yet, but I'm going to talk about it soon. I can guarantee that. So exciting news here on Mountaineer Moment. I'm going to let you know in a little bit. So stick around or, come on back for that. Episode 171, though, here is in the books. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time on a Mountaineer Moment. Let's go Mountaineers.